It shouldn't come as a surprise when I say I like RPGs. I'm sure I've said it a great handful of times already here, but also a decent amount of references are said from time to time about said genre. So you can imagine my excitement when I found out there is a comic that is somewhat of an RPG theme around it. Not only from an outsider's perspective from the covers of the issues and even some screenshots I've seen from the comic, I was floored and thought, oh boy, this is for me through and through. And can you guess it? I really did like it a lot. However, I went in there for the cool RPG stuff that I was seeing. And yes, there is definitely RPG stuff in Die. But leaving the comic, I didn't think I would be so shocked of how not only with how amazing and great it was, but how excellently it is written as well. Now, if you haven't read Die and plan to, please leave this video and come back when you're ready. For the ones that have read it or just don't really care to read this work, even though I think you should, the main part of the story takes place is, well, called Die. Shocker, I know. However, the setup is 6 friends one day get together to have some fun, playing some tabletop RPG. However, during their session, they get teleported to this world called Die. 2 years later, 5 of them return from that world. Then we skip 25 years into the future, and the 5 friends once again are sucked right back into the world of Die, for some unknown reasons. If that doesn't somewhat pique your interest, then I don't know what will, or even a little, but hey, I digress. It's a really cool concept in my opinion. Now for the ones that are sticking around or have read Die, then we know why they get called back. However, what makes the comic one of the more interesting comics I have read is the discussion, or more so, the written aspect of the blurred lines that come in place when you talk about fantasy and reality. Look, we see all these amazing fantasies and places all of our hopes and dreams could ever think about. Skyrim with some amazing high fantasy settings, Cyberpunk 2077 with a dystopian world that's super futuristic that you could literally be like anything you want. You get the point, or at least I hope you do, but one of the features that a lot of people, including myself, love about these games is the freedom to choose how we play said game. And basically we can put ourselves into this made up character's shoes and craft our own unique story from different aspects of that world and create something cool. It's one of those features that I think make this gaming genre and just genre in general a lot more interesting. And with the ways games continue to evolve as long as certain elements allow, I could see this feature becoming even more wonderful down the road. In Die's case, however, this is really put to that limit. There is a sort of moral ground when it comes to putting ourselves into the shoes of made-up characters. Some people act how they would in a normal setting, with normal interactions and stuff, so on and so forth, like they would act how they typically act in their day-to-day lives. Would you help a village in time of need if it brought you no reward? Or would you pick a path that allowed you to be a big, mean, tough guy? Will you bully your way around said place and rob people of their goods because you need them and you don't see why an NPC would need it? Originally, when our main cast went into Die, they weren't really sure if they would ever return to the real world. So in turn, they acted a little carefree. However, the actions that they took in Die during this time came back to haunt them the second time they went back. Let's take a look at Chuck, for instance. We aren't 100% sure of the things he did during the first time he went to Die, but through clues and whether his actions and some of the dialogue of things he's mentioned and sometimes what others have mentioned, it seems more or less he was letting his inner desires roam free, if you get what I'm saying. And that's kind of being nice about it. He kind of seemed like an SOB the first time he was in Die. When he got free, however, he became a best-selling author by telling his stories of his time during Die, which I guess is all fine and dandy, but I think this is also one of those things where you see people's real intentions on display. Again, we aren't sure of his actions, and we aren't totally clear on what stories he told in his books, but again, we kind of get a good feel of them. Given that, would you like to know what he has done? Think about it. If someone went to this crazy world and came back, wouldn't you be kind of interested to see what it was like? I think this is one of those things where curiosity gets the better of people. Somewhat like a car crash that doesn't include you, hopefully. You want to be a little nosy and peek and see what happened. Was someone hurt? Is everyone okay? Etc. In this case, however, someone acted in a way you probably never thought you would, so why not see what he did and how he did things, because why not, right? This is just one person from the group who really was testing these blurred lines here. Of course, we know fiction and reality are two very different things altogether, right? However, given the chance to go to a world where you may never return, Would you let that little demon on your shoulder do the talking? Or would you keep your morals about you? No, I'm not going to sit here and lecture everyone about, well, you should make sure you do XYZ because this is far-fetched. I'm not here to discuss that. Could something like this sometime in the future happen? I guess, maybe. It's kind of hard to say with how technology is going. If technology continues to go the way it does, this could be like a Sword Art Online thing. I will say this, however. I think you can tell a little bit about people in stories that have different dialogues or the ways they approach the game. Again, however, even this could be a thin line because some people just want to see the whole complete story from all angles and want to see what happens, or maybe they don't pay attention to what's happening and just pick whatever they see. Especially when there's like a quick time event, because usually those throw people off all the time. There's also the other side of this, and that's how certain situations affect the choices we make. Again, we're going to be using Chuck, and if you haven't read Die, this is a pretty big spoiler. As we try and figure out our way back home the second time around, Chuck is very adamant about finding a white mage before they leave, and basically says he's not leaving until he finds one. We find out Chuck has cancer, and that it's not treatable, and he will be passing away because of it. Knowing this, we see why Chuck wants to find a mage, but we also learn very quickly that even a mage can't save him. So this brings up an interesting question. What would you do? No matter what options you choose, at the end of the road, you pass away. You're basically a dead man walking. Do you go back to the real world and live the rest of your days with your kids and try to be there for them? Or do you stay in this crazy fantasy world where you're able to act out your own inner desires, whatever that may be? In Chuck's case, we see that he tries to go and continue to be as normally as possible. But when the end came around, he tried to sacrifice himself, and his words, "I'm not suicidal, but I thought sacrificing myself for everyone, someone has to die, right?" This was the moment where, before the Grandmaster killed Chuck, he came to terms with himself, he realized that he's been an awful person, and at the end, he was sorry for everything he has done, not only to our group, but the people in the fantasy world. Even as he was dying, however, he implies, well, I'm not really sure I would have done this if I realized how much it would have hurt. At the end, that was Chuck through and through, this whole story. A person who, again, I believe to be more of on the side of being an SOB, and given the option to let his desires to be free, he allowed it. And even when there was a chance where us, the reader, thinks maybe at the end, maybe he turned the page before passing. Nope. At the end, Chuck was still Chuck. He was allowed to let himself let loose with no regard for others, and I think it's funny that his class is the Fool, which is all based on luck. But in my opinion, Chuck is probably one of the most unluckiest people in this whole story. In his rebirth, however, it does seem he's aiming to actually turn that page and start over, given he's now a fallen, but the ending is up in the air to what's happening next, so I guess it's kind of let your imagination take over from there and try to put things together of what you can for the small dialogue we got at the end of Chuck being a fallen. Also, I know Chuck was the main focal point of this video discussion, but don't get it really twisted. He's not the only one with these issues. Ash had and is having issues with understanding their gender. Going to Die allowed them to try and understand themselves more and be accepting of the person they are trying to be, while also trying to figure out who they actually are as a person. Matthew, in his first time in Die, lost his mother, and during his second time was told his father passed away. Him being in the grief night that allowed the power of their emotions to enhance himself was bittersweet. We saw, and we can only imagine, the real pain he or anyone in his shoes would go through given the same circumstances. The first time you get teleported to this magical world, you lost your mother. The second time you travel to this world, you're being told your father passed away while you're here. And during the second time around, you don't even know if you can return, which is probably one hellhole or one insane thing to think about, that you've lost both your parents while you were trapped in some fantasy la la land. Isabelle was sort of our lost soul in this group. Ever since the first time in Die, she seems to have taken things at a steady Waters pace. Even then, however, she is the one who you would thought had the most to lose. She was the biggest voice of reason and someone people looked towards at times to help to guide them back. But the thing of it is that she herself didn't care whether they returned or not, nor does she really have like a big goal of returning. She just felt like everything in her real life was just a dead end. But yet she was the one who wanted everyone to go back. and try to fix this problem that they were in. Then there was Angela, a cyberpunk class that were better or worse was based off sort of addiction, because in order for her to use her class, she needed this fair coin, gold every day. But not only that, she has both her arms again. She lost her one arm coming back from die the first time around. And not only that, she falls trapped between her kids at home and the kids she has in die alongside her dog. So for her, this is a completely reasonable and hard decision to make, I guess, for some people, right? Because, again, when you get teleported to a fantasy world, you don't think you're going back. But in some magical way, without spoiling too much, you do return. But then you don't expect to go back a second time and live with the actions you did the first time around. So this was also another really interesting character arc that she goes through, with having to deal with not only trying to fight for her kids at home, but fight for her kid and die as well. Also, I know I made Chuck to be a bad character, and well, he sort of is, but that doesn't mean he's a bad character written wise, nor are any of these characters. Gillen made these characters some of the more interesting and well-diverse characters I've had the opportunity to read about, while Stephanie's out-of-this-world artwork allowed them to not only show their true colors, but allowed for everything that their actions do just stand out so well on paper. This world with all these high-stakes moments just pop out and make some of the best moments even better. Die is a worthwhile read if you haven't read it, and it's something I really enjoyed a great amount of. And not only that, we have now Die Loaded, which is the sequel of Die, which, to be honest, I'm not sure how it is at this current point, because I kind of want to do a binge read of it, so I'm letting issues stack up for a good while before I dive into that. But knowing Gillen and his work, and with Stephanie alongside of him, I can't imagine them crafting anything short of spectacular yet again in this magical world. And I just know that this sequel will be probably good, or maybe just as great as Die, and that is a very high bar to reach. This is the end of the video, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, I hope you leave me a sub or comment below about comic recommendations, or if you read Die, let me know what you thought of it. I hope you all have a great and safe rest of your day, and if your day isn't going good, I hope it does get better. Get your steps in, get your water in, check your posture, and always remember you're important. Until the next one, I will see you all later.